Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Davis. I am the engineering director for Nike Plus Running.
And I'm Mike Rosenbaum. I'm the CEO of Catalyte IT Services.
And today we're here to talk a little bit about how Nike uses onshoring to drive efficiency, velocity, and quality in application product delivery. So maybe a quick step back to talk about Nike Plus, kind of where we started, what we're doing. Back in 2006, Nike launched in partnership with Apple Nike Plus. At the time, it was a pod that went into your shoe. There was an app that Apple really kind of put into iPod devices at the time. You can track your activity, you could track your runs. And it was a pretty popular product. In its first 5 years, we had about 5 million users, which is, I would say, pretty successful. And after that success, really kind of leadership took a look at that and said, hey, we can really bring this to the next level. We can do a lot more. And so a few years ago, the vision was really, out there. Like, let's really own this space. Let's bring this up. Let's do something great. Let's really start doing lots of cool stuff. At the time, the Fuel Band was really coming into conception. We were thinking about building that. We decided to build Nike Plus running on iOS natively, build it on Android natively to bring it to a lot more people. And at the time, then we also thought, hey, what if we bring Nike Plus into people's living rooms? Partnership with Microsoft, partnership with Xbox to have our own video game, basically, where people can work out in front of their TVs in their living rooms. So really kind of hitting everything. The Fuel Band was for active people, not necessarily runners. We still had a heavy focus on the running community with our running apps. We still support our partnership with Apple and all the stuff we're doing there. And, right, the whole Xbox thing. So lots of different venues, lots of different avenues, lots of different directions to go into. It was a pretty massive kind of vision undertaking. Of course, we wanted to have a unified web experience. As consumers are using these products, we didn't want to just have Fuel Band world, running world, Xbox world. We wanted to have one unified place where you can really have your active life right there in front of you. So we needed a unified web experience on top of all this. Of course, e-commerce. For those of you that don't know, we sell shoes at Nike. And then, of course, and then we also know, hey, we can't do all of this ourselves. We're going to probably need some kind of partner API, some way to bring data in to let our partners utilize data to have really next-generation products, make sure our products are as great as they can be, and we're enabling our partners to also do cool things. And as far as the desktop apps, we've got physical devices. They've got to communicate across the experience in multiple ways. We had basically proxy applications to be able to do that. And to bring this whole thing to life, we needed a scalable platform underneath it all to be able to accomplish all of this. Having the data in one place, being able to see have Fuel Band data, running data, all this stuff, have an API on top of it. We needed to have a large, scalable platform to build everything on, and that was Nike Plus platform, website, sat on top of that to really bring this whole thing to life. So when we started off, there was really a handful of people on the ground to execute this. And a lot of the projects we'd undertaken before, we decided, this makes sense to do things the same way we've always done. We kind of have a handful of people on the ground managing the project. We're going to have large outsourced teams to really get the busy work done. We're going to build this big thing. It's all going to work to a degree. And that's how we went about trying to execute against this vision. Of course, we brought in a lot of, some domestic partners to really work on the interface, the human interaction, like how people are actually going to work with the software. But right from the start, things were a little bit bumpy. Things were a little bit rocky. Really, initially, there was kind of just a lack of understanding of what we were going to deliver on the development team. Really, they just kind of didn't get it. The context, bringing your active, wearing wearable technology, having your active life in one place. Really, this whole concept of everything just didn't make sense to the people that were actually doing the work. And the developers didn't really fit into the Nike culture. Anyone that goes to the Nike campus is going to see. Bill Bowerman, greatest coach of all time. The innovation that goes into everything we do, the energy, the excitement that goes into everything we do. Just for some reason, couldn't get that translated into the teams that we had on the ground doing the work, and it really led to a lack of cohesion across the teams, which then led to a lot of inefficiency. We'd try and get something done, didn't quite get it done right. Okay, do it again. No, didn't quite get it done right. We'd kind of start spinning our wheels, delivering something, but not really delivering what we set out to do. And so we basically got to a place where we said, we need to rethink what we're doing here. We need a different team. We need to attack things differently. We just really need to kind of hopefully bring in some people that are kind of just going to get what we're going to do here, get what we're trying to do here, to really kind of partner with everybody and really move the needle on these projects.
So this all came to a head in early 2011, a couple of months into the effort that Chris is talking about, and it came to a head in a particular sprint. So all of this work was being done in agile and in 2-week sprints. So the issue came to a head on Wednesday before a sprint was to end on Friday. So Nike called us, said, we're looking for a new solution. Can you have a team on the ground on Monday? And we did.
Yes, and then it started working out. In the first sprint, we were able to start delivering stuff. And that got people a lot more excited. Like, oh, great, okay, now we're getting stuff done. We're seeing things change here. We're actually making progress. We're getting done what we said we were going to get done. The team really meshed well with everyone. They fit into the culture. They understood the product and the vision of what we were trying to do. They really got excited. They tried to, basically it turned into, there's more slides on this later, it really turned into a partnership. The developers felt like they were part of the team, they were contributing. And in an agile way, that definitely feels pretty crucial to be able to deliver something efficiently, especially a project of this size. And the first version of our platform was built in only a few months. And again, more on that later, but it was definitely pretty exciting. It only took a few sprints, really. We got people in, we got them excited, they understood the vision in the project, and we were able to get something out the door that everyone could really feel good, like, okay, we're ready to launch. We know we can launch this now. We really feel great about all of this.
So Catalyst, for those of you who don't know who we are, we're an onshore agile application services provider. And we've been around since 2001. And the premise we're built on is that the classic way that application services, application development is done is inefficient. It's inefficient because the way that you typically put teams together is based on a resume. And a resume tends to be a pretty poor predictor of success for a developer. And so what Catalyst does is we apply big data to hiring and team assembly. And we tie the data that we're looking at in potential applicants and potential team members to particular success metrics that we've seen over time. And that allows us to achieve a higher level of productivity at a lower cost, and Chris will walk through that in a moment. It has a couple of other values. We have development centers in Baltimore, Maryland, and Portland, Oregon. And on any given day, about half our staff is on site at a client for part or all of the day. But again, this use of data allows us to deploy teams very quickly. So this was an example of that. Typically, we maintain the ability to deploy up to 2 full Scrum teams anywhere in the US within 24 hours. And our blended rates are typically equivalent to the blended rate of a global services provider, of an offshore provider. And in this situation, we were the exact same rate as the offshore incumbents.
Maybe to take a step back and just dive into these numbers a little bit and talk about, I'm assuming that everyone in the room knows the concept of agile. Agile development, basically the opposite of waterfall. If you're kind of working towards something that maybe has hazy requirements, it's good to iterate on things. Try and get feedback from stakeholders consistently to make sure that you're delivering the right thing. Something that's really great for the consumer. A product that people are really going to be able to use effectively. So in the whole concept of agile, there's the concept of story cards. Story card represents basically your contract between your development team and your stakeholders. It's, here's a task that we need to get done. We're going to deliver this task. And then everyone agrees, yeah, okay. And then the development team says, we think this is the level of effort it will do to get this task done. And those are measured in what they call story points. So if you take a look at story points, it really, if you have a certain number of story points every sprint, it's easy to kind of then measure that out over time to figure out the velocity of your team, how well they're getting their cards, how they're delivering their tasks sprint over sprint, and how much effort they're putting into that to get it done.
So just a little bit of background on this data. I mean, obviously the data speaks for itself. That that the cost for Catalyst was 1/3 the cost per story point for the other 4 partners that Nike is using for this. 3 of them being tier 1 global services providers, 1 of them being a domestic provider. And and for those of you who are more statistically minded, the data on this in terms of the 5 partners, all 5 partners essentially have headcounts working on this of 40 or more. So there's enough data to be statistically significant in this. Another interesting tidbit is that the cost per story point for the 3 tier 1 offshore providers is essentially equivalent to the cost per story point for the domestic provider.
And then digging into these numbers a bit more to get a little bit more into kind of story cards and story points. When you look at something like this, you would think, oh, well, okay, if one team's more efficient, cards and points should match up, right? I mean, makes sense. But what we really see when we dig into this, you're moving a lot more cards, a lot more points, but you have this discrepancy between these numbers. Really, if you think about the agile process, when a development team gets a story, they get a card, there's a couple of things they can do. Either if it's something they kind of don't get, they don't want to really confront anybody or talk about anything, they might say something like, this is hard, I'm just going to say, this is the most amount of points. I'm going to get it done, but give me a whole sprint, highest level of effort. Or the developer can say, hey, I can't really see in my mind exactly how to build this thing out. We need to break this down into smaller chunks, into smaller deliverable pieces, so we can realistically get these tasks done. So when I see something like the discrepancy in number of cards and points, what it really points to is developers are partnering more with the team. And developers are able to look at tasks as they come through and say, this task is not realistic. Let's break it down. We can break it down into smaller chunks and deliver those smaller chunks. Then what that translates into is really more iterations, being more agile. If you can deliver these smaller manageable chunks throughout a sprint, stakeholders have more of a chance to come back and say, hey, maybe this isn't exactly what I wanted, or yes, this is exactly what I wanted. So we have that ability to iterate on these things more. The key really is that partnership between the whole team getting something done.
Another interesting tidbit when you look at this data is, as you can see, Nike's collected data and presented it both in an average or mean and a median. And the reason why that's relevant is there's a concept in software development that occasionally lots of the work is done by 1 or 2 people on the team. And so the folks who are sort of at the far end of the spectrum are really carrying most of the load, and the rest of the team sort of along for the ride. And so by looking at both a mean, which is going to be distorted by outliers like that, and a median, which is going to basically cut out the outliers, you can see that actually these kinds of differentials really do exist across the entire team. And obviously the relevance of that is that the sum is more than the total is more than the sum of the parts, rather than, again, 1 or 2 people really doing all the work.
Bless you. I think the most obvious, indicator of quality is the number of defects produced by different teams. And then, too, as you probably know, I mean, if you think of the software development lifecycle, you've got developers writing code. Then you've got usually some kind of automated quality assurance step. You've got functional QA. You're usually iterating between different environments before you push something out, and ultimately your product gets out into production. And the further along you are in that process, when you find bugs, the more expensive they are to fix. If you can really get less bugs out of the development process and that kind of automated QA process, then you're in pretty good shape. That's really where you want to iterate. As soon as you get off, you go through functional QA, you find problems. Okay, now you have to go back to the beginning, and it goes through all those steps again. And then the most horrendous thing is finding problems in production that you have to go back and fix. Because usually that not only means you have to go all the way back to the beginning and then go through all those processes again, but typically it also means you're taking your top developers out of normal feature development and putting them on this like production fixing thing for like, this is never fun to do. So finding getting those defects done early, making sure you've got less defects coming out of development is really key to success overall.
So, and as I'm sure everyone can notice, I think a lot of folks would, probably start from the assumption that an onshore delivery is higher quality than an offshore delivery. And so, you see that here in the offshore defect rate being 20% and Catalyst defect rate being 9%. But I think the other interesting tidbit is that the onshore alternative is 16%. And so, obviously in a slightly self-interested way, we think that's support for our argument that that applying data to team assembly results in much better results. The onshore alternative was charging 2 to 2.5 times our hourly rate. And so the fact that we're delivering at a much lower defect rate, again, I think sort of speaks to that model.
So in summary, we were able to, hey, okay, Nike Plus is out there. It's live. Go ahead, get a field band, go running with it. Awesome. It's great. We were able to deliver everything. We got it done when we needed to get it done. The reason I say it repeatedly is because really it goes into the whole agile model of development. We said, okay, here's what we're going to do. We went towards it. We got it done. We said, okay, that's great. Now that we're looking at it, this is what we want. Okay. So we went towards that, and we got that done. They said, okay, great. Now that we're looking at that, this is what we want. And that's normal with software development. I mean, it's one of the great things about software. You don't have to build a bridge and tear it down and build a bridge again. Software is pretty flexible. You can do this kind of stuff. It's normal. So having the ability to be able to do that time and time again is great. Kind of really gave us the confidence and the backing of all of our sponsors. They believed that we were going to do this stuff. At first we went down a different road and said, hey, we're going to do things differently. It's a little scary. And we showed time and time again that this is working. We're doing this. We're in a good place. Also, this is one of the, we had a few projects. This is one of the real leading projects to bring us into the leadership in the wearable technology market. It's a cool place to be. You definitely see a lot of things going towards wearable technology. We're in Disneyland. I don't know if anyone else wanted to go to Disneyland while you were here. Yeah, there you go. Everybody's doing it. It's super convenient. It's great. So, being in the fitness sector and really leading that charge is, it's really been becoming a key part of where we're going. Definitely an exciting place to be. And, yeah.
Cool. Great. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
We talked a little bit about kind of day one. You said you were deployed 24 hours, to kind of take over the project. It's gone a little bit astray. It sounds like there's a big data component to assembling teams, but from an agile development perspective, from role replacement, what can you do in 24 hours that was successful next sprint?
So, for those familiar with sort of the economics of applications outsourcing, application services, essentially our levers are utilization and rate. By using this model of assembling teams, we're able to run at a lower utilization rate than a domestic shop typically would. So at our current growth rate, which is essentially doubling in size every year, so we're growing incredibly quickly right now because of all the trends that are attracting you here, and thank you for being here. We target about a 65% utilization number. And so what that means is that essentially we have the folks in-house already who are ready to go. And that's really what lets us do the rapid response. Does that?
Yeah, were there roles such as product owner or Scrum Master or other agile development roles that you took over from the existing partners on that first day?
In this particular situation, I think the answer is we were deploying a development team. I think that the... Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's right. In this specific situation, it was a development team. We had a lot of tech leadership. We had Scrum Masters. And so those guys just plugged into what we were doing.
So since then, our relationship with different parts of Nike and lots of other clients is we deploy whole teams that include Scrum Masters. But in this particular situation, for the first team, it wasn't. So. Yep. Sorry.
I wanted to ask Mr. Nike, what was the difference between the partnership models with Catalyst versus the other domestic provider?
The difference in the relationship?
And the partnership, the way you partnered on working together.
The partnership was actually the same. We had a team of developers, and we brought them on site to work with us. So they were sitting right next to us the whole time we were doing things. There really wasn't any kind of difference in the partnership at all, especially in day-to-day operation. As we were doing things, everyone was right there working together.
So was their fail then that they didn't have good resources, they weren't well managed? If it's the same partnership you have with Catalyst, what was different about them versus Catalyst, the way they staffed or what?
It was a combination. It was basically just that quality of resources, number one, and then that really led to that inability to really understand what we were getting after. Those were, to me, the keys. Really being able to communicate effectively, break tasks down, work with everybody. Instead of kind of just being kind of just. I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. To me, especially as an engineering director, I don't need developers that are going to sit in a room. I can stick pizza under the door and code comes out. That's great when it works, but it doesn't usually work that way. Having people that were actually partnering with us to get this stuff done. There you go. Exactly. The first team. They were there. They worked hard, but they didn't feel engaged at the same level.
So we collect public data on folks, and then we collect data that we're able to collect in the context of people applying to us. So, for example, when people apply, we'll do things that cause anxiety, and then we'll measure things like their keystrokes and seconds they look at something, whether they close a browser, that kind of information. And then we'll collect several thousand data points and then correlate that data with velocity, quality, team performance. And that's what generates the algorithms. And we have 6 people whose full-time job it is to build those models, to build those quantitative models. And so do you have a sense of it? To hire 150 people in the next 9 months, we'll evaluate 10,000 people. So I'm sorry, there was a question in the back.
I was wondering, the cost model, how is it that you're able to be so competitive with offshore if you're co-locating these folks to the work where it needs to be, and that you're doing this big data analysis?
So we started in 2001. The book Moneyball came out in 2002. We used to try to explain it, and today we're able to use the term big data. When we started in 2001, nobody was using that term. In fact, in 2002, when the book came out, we would say things like, have you read the book Moneyball?
So you're hiring a bunch of
Essentially, yes. So what we're doing is we're saying things like, the market pays up for a master's degree. We find no statistically significant correlation between a master's degree and performance as a developer. And so we're able to hone in on what is the actual performance you're looking for, instead of a whole bunch of signals in a resume that people may think are relevant, but which we find statistically don't tell us a lot. So, I don't know if you could.
How do you keep the Catalyst consultants engaged or so highly motivated? What's your reward system?
People have the ability to essentially quadruple their income in 4 years. The question is, people engaged. So last year, our voluntary turnover rate was 5.8%. Folks have the ability, now you have to be really, really good for this, but folks have the ability to quadruple their income in 4 years-ish. And that incredibly aggressive promotion trajectory keeps people engaged. But I think so that's the financial model. But I think the more significant model is that, a lot of our work is producty stuff, it's customer-facing stuff, it's data-intensive work, and it's exciting. And so really good developers like doing different things. And this gives folks the opportunity to take on different tasks and work in different environments with different technologies over time.
Have you implemented projects in a distributed environment where not necessarily all team members are
A very small amount. Typically, we find that that having all the team members co-located is really critical to achieving a high level of agile performance. Now, that team may be at the client site one day of every 2-week sprint, and in our development center the other 9 days. But having people in the same place is relevant.
Definitely.
Looks like it.
Can you talk about some of the technologies you feel are your core strength for your teams?
For Catalyst, we're an Oracle Platinum partner, so about half our business is Java and Oracle. We're a Microsoft Gold partner. About a quarter of our business is the Microsoft stack, and then a quarter of our business sort of a smattering of other stuff.
So many companies are looking to offshore right now.
Uh-huh.
Outsource.
Uh-huh.
How do you get your story out there to compete? Because I hadn't even heard about it.
That's why we're here. So, I will tell you that until May of this year, we didn't have a single person in our organization whose full-time job was marketing and sales.
Okay.
And so that is now changing. So.
So, since I'm getting it, that the model you're following is something that could work when you're not that big. But as you grow, do you see your model scaling? Are you coming across any specific challenges that you wouldn't necessarily have when you're smaller? How are you dealing with those?
I think that I would say the biggest challenges are really around things like, in the last year, we've had 613 incoming inquiries. And when you don't have a full-time sales and marketing staff, that becomes a challenge. I think what your question may be getting at, and some people sometimes ask, is it possible that we're going to be able to find enough people to hire up to be able to deliver at this scale? And the answer is that because we're looking, I think, broader than our large competitors are looking, because we're not relying on resumes as significantly, we're able to draw on a larger pool of people. So our 2 development centers today are in metro areas that are each in the 2 to 2.5 million people area, 2 to 2.5 million people range. And today our recruiting process, because so much of it is automated, essentially requires a total annual recruiting budget of $25,000 and 1/4 of an FTE. So we have no problem hiring up today. Hiring 150 people is not a problem. Was that part of what you were getting at with your question?
Well, the other part of it was, as you grow and you build a larger staff base, how do you continue to keep that larger team properly managed? It's part of corporate culture. It's part of making sure every employee gets that messaging and stays engaged at a very high level. Scaling it out is probably difficult.
Yeah, one of the advantages of a very rapid growth rate is that we're able to do a lot of internal promotions, and so that maintains culture in a more effective way. So. Uh-huh.
Sure.
So you said you have Catalyte and 3 other traditional IT vendors. Do you see Catalyte being applicable for one type of area versus the other IT vendors? Is it like 2-speed IT or something like that?
For us, the way we've kind of seen success is, and we still use offshore providers, especially for quality assurance, that kind of things. If we we release these products that have thousands and thousands of test cases that we need to make sure are absolutely, in multiple locales. So we have to make sure that all of these test cases are covered. We don't release anything weird in some other language or something like that. And we find that where the tests are extremely well defined, where everything is really extremely clear, things where you can kind of go down a checklist and be like, okay, check, did that, check, did that, check, did that, then offshore has worked very, very well for us. It's really efficient. It's great. Kind of, in this project, I think the key definitely was kind of having the people on site that really understood what we were getting after, whereas, experimenting with offshore kind of solutions, just it made it really, really difficult, especially with time differences and whatnot. A lot of times it was hard, we'd say, okay, let's get this done. We'd get it back. wasn't what we needed. So having, really to me, the key was really having co-located people that really understood the context of what we were getting after was what worked very well for us here.
Thanks. I think we're out of time. We'll be around for just a couple minutes if folks have other questions, and Chris will also be at Catalyst booth, which is 1009, until about 3:30 if folks have other questions or want to talk in a more private setting. Then, yes. Thanks for being here.